Good afternoon, anywhere you are and where you are watching us from. Good evening to you, or good afternoon, or good morning, any part of the world that you are watching us from. This is Yafo Institute's Policy Town Hall event. If you are hearing about Yafo Institute for the very first time, we are an independent policy and research organization and think tank with core aims to promote libertarian ideas and free enterprise research through public policy debate and advocacy for a free and prosperous society in Ghana. We build good collaboration with numerous institutions and think tanks in Africa and the world at large to foster and develop potentials to creating a niche of prosperity. The Yafo Institute is the winner of the Atlas Network 2024 Africa Think Tank Shark Tank Award in Tanzania. It is our mission to educate and connect students, young professionals, and entrepreneurs with global opportunities through free enterprise research and innovative policy advocacy for a prosperous society. Today, the theme for the Policy Town Hall is assessing Ghana's 120-day social contract and the resetting agenda. This is something that has been topical in our social and political discourse. Quickly, let me introduce the panel. To do justice to the theme, we have Emmanuel Kondo. He is a senior. Okay, let me just introduce the panel. Okay, let's mention that and they say one or two things before I bring their profile on. I think that would be helpful so that I don't talk too much. So let me mention that we have Emmanuel Kondo with us, and also Asamoah Isaac Ellie. So let me allow them to say one or two, maybe greet the audience, and then I can introduce them properly. Thank you. So Emmanuel, you are first.
Hi, Nathaniel. Good evening to yourself, and good evening to your distinguished listeners and the citizens of Ghana, both here and across those who are joining us virtually and across the nation and also the globe. It's a great honor to be part of this town hall discussion, which is hosted by Yafo. I just hope tonight's event will give us more than a policy review, but probably to be a call to a collective reflection of leadership and accountability. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. So Isaac, let me hear from you. Isaac, you are muted. Let me unmute you. Okay, so kindly unmute and then. Great.
All right, good evening, Mr. Nathaniel, and good evening to my colleague, Mr. Emmanuel, and good evening to our audience out there too. So I believe you are going to have a fruitful time this evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Myself, I am Nathaniel Dramina. I am the president for Yafo Institute and your host for tonight's Policy Town Hall event. Without much, let me introduce the panelists properly. So we are going to have a panel discussion on this theme. And our panel, we have two members on our panel. The first is Emmanuel Kondo. He is a senior consultant at one of the leading global consulting firms, advising clients across Africa, Sierra Leone, and Liberia on tax compliance, business strategy, and regulatory efficiency. A co-founder of the African Policy Foundation, he is deeply engaged in public policy, ESG advocacy, and strategic and sustainable development. His work bridge private sector insight with civic innovations to drive inclusive growth across Africa. So that's our panelist, the first panelist. We'll move on to our second panelist. He is Isaac Asamoah Ellie. He is a policy scholar and an in-house policy scholar at Yafo Institute. He is also a development planner with years of industry experience working at the Ministry of Local Government, Decentralization, and Rural Development. He is experienced in designing and implementing short-term and medium-term goals, medium-term development plans with particular consideration for monitoring and evaluation. So I will say that our panelists are top with their background. Myself, I'm glad to have them for this discussion. I know they are going to make this interaction very successful. So we set the ball rolling by looking at our team. We say assessing Ghana's 120-day social contract and resetting Ghana agenda. This comes from the backdrop of policy promise leading to 2024 election. We are in 2025. The president that was elected, that's President John Mahama, directly stated that he was going to do key things within 120 days. So if we are here, that's the purpose, and want to find out how far it has come, and we'll make assessment thereof. So let me first call on the panelists to make their opening statement, and then we can do the question and answering sections. Thank you. So Mr. Emmanuel, you can begin with us. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Nathaniel. So I think we should gathered here is not merely to evaluate the 120-day social contract of the president, but to ask ourselves, is Ghana truly on the path of resetting, that is economically, institutionally, and morally? So I hope that as we embark on this inquiry, we are grounded into evidence and clarity. Right. So the 120-day social contract, as made by the president, helps to restore trust in the government and also ensures that the people are put first, and also promises are actually actually adhered to, and also shows how the government takes the people seriously, right? So just to set the stage for a broader resetting, I think this is just to help set the stage for a broader resetting. Monitoring the deliverables, I think for the past days, following the discourse across media houses and also think tank from Imani Ghana, from Joy News and the rest, you realize everybody had done its benchmark. Some people saying 52% achievement, some people say 50% achievement. Some people also say 48% achievement. And I think the presidential team, there's a publication also online by the presidential team where they also say 72% or so. But I think during the speech, the president himself also made us aware that he has made 100% progress. But from my end, I think that the president has made enormous progress. If going back to high school, I had a math teacher who would say, who would ask for popular answer when there's a math question, and the popular answer is what he picks. So even from the publications or the discourse which have gone on in the past days concerning this topic, it's evident that most people are leaning towards 50 plus achievements, and taking 50 plus achievement in any professional exams is a pass mark. So I'll say the government is on track in terms of this. And realistically, some of the policies are policies which can just be at initiating stage and cannot be fully fulfilled. Hence, we have to allow the government some room to ensure that it passes through the process for its full fulfillment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I like the conclusion part of your opening statement. You said that we should allow some room for the government, because we don't just judge policy by the mere launch of them. We should give us some time so that we see the impact that it makes in the economy. I think that's very great. So Isaac, let's hear you. Thank you. Isaac, let me remind you that you are muted, so kindly unmute yourself so that.
Okay, sorry for that. Yeah, so I said I wanted to take from where he just ended at. And personally, I had an unrealistic target Yeah, that, like, according to my expectation, when it comes to the attaining the social contract, and because I was looking for 100%, even though it wasn't realistic, and I believe you all got to admit that yes, some of these things are not realistic. But then when you look at it in general, yes, with the social contract, there were governance institutions in it. That's to say governance targets. So we was able to institute the cabinet within the stipulated date that was given out. We also saw that even though there was provision made for appointing 60 ministers, and eventually as at now, we have 57 ministers. So, when it comes to something like that, you can't tell whether we could classify as he attained that particular target or not. So like you mentioned now, some of them are not full, but then they have been implemented, and they're positive. So when it comes to area tourism too, we are looking at the blaster experience that was promised, and that one too has been done justice to. In the area of education too, the education dialogue has been held already. And education is one sector that I want to actually make time in the course of this dialogue and bring up some inputs. Then when it comes to the health sector too, he did promise the Mahama-Care, and I believe that was launched 2 weeks ago, and that is a plus for the government. Now, when it comes to the economic aspect, we are looking at the scrapping of levies and the nuisance taxes all, and I believe they've done a good job when it comes to that aspect too. For now, it's only one of the tasks that was mentioned that has not been actualized yet. That's the COVID-19 levy. But then I recall that when the Minister of Finance was in Parliament to read the budget, he explained that was going to take some time because they have to discuss that with the IMF. So, like my colleague mentioned earlier, I believe it's good. It's good. Generally, yeah, when you look at the general assessment of everyone, nobody is actually saying that, yeah, it's been a very bad performance. So I believe you're on a good course. All right,
Great.
thank you.
Great. So since you've started mentioning the areas already, let me still maintain on you, Isaac, so that you take it from here. What are the most significant commitment that has been made under the 120-day social contract, and to what extent do you believe that it has been fulfilled? So which area do you think the government has really committed to in this 120 days?
Yeah, when it comes to the significant aspect, I believe is the posture of the government. Okay, I believe they set a certain example that, okay, this is the direction that we want to go. We would need all Ghanaians to sacrifice what they have to and come along with us. So now when you take the increment of salary, for instance, that 10% that was given to labor, normally when you consider the inflation rate at 23% at that time, you would expect something ranging from that time. But then the president had to come in and request that we all take this route together. And normally you wouldn't accept this unless the government of the day has also done something to win your belief that, okay, yeah, this is what I want to do, and come along with us, sacrifice, and let's all go along. So I believe when it comes to the significant aspect is the posters, the communication. I want to believe that Ghanaians believe that we are heading towards some place. In the past few days, the Bloomberg report that came, that indicates that the Ghana city is actually performing very well. When you look at from January to this time, it's in 16% appreciation. And that's a very good thing for investors.
Okay. I get that. Great. So, Iman, on the same question, where do you think there have been most significant commitment, and then to what extent, Emmanuel?
Yes. Okay. So, listen, I would say, in all, we have most of the policies being initiated, and that is the first good call that has been made. That most of them have been initiated, and like I said earlier on, its initiation alone cannot tell the long-term growth, the long-term sustainability of it. So we will have to make time to see how it goes, it plays out, like the Black Star experience, the Mahama-Care, the employment programs, the national entrepreneurship apprenticeship programs, and the rest. They are all good initiatives, and they were part of what was said will be done within the 120 days. However, these ones are initiatives that have been launched, but we need to make room to see how it's going to be sustained. And even in the case of there being a lean government, right? A lean government is not something that can be determined within one day. The government is in power for 4 years. So at the end of 4 years, we will be able to tell whether the government has been true to its words, whether it has been lean or not. Because after 1 year, probably there could be changes. But I think what is of concern are some of the taxes, especially the review of taxes and levies on vehicle and equipment, which was mentioned to be part of the 120 days, which have not yet been attended to. And I think some review of also some custom acts to scrap the law on banning of importation of salvage vehicles. And I also think the COVID levy, for instance, and some other security issues on the vigilante elements in the country, and also to streamline government scholarship administration. I think these are also things that are of key importance. Some, especially with the taxes, also have to go through some processes in terms of drafting the bill, going before Parliament and the rest. We are hoping that in the coming months, despite it's not being part of despite it's not being fulfilled within the 120 days as promised, for in the coming months is something that should be looked at as early as possible, because we have I think there's something that the business community is looking forward to, especially on the Customs Act, where importation of vehicles and other equipment have much importance to the growth of the economy. Yeah, Tanya, that's it from my end. Thanks.
Great. So let me continue with you again, because you have some experience. Let me say you have experience in ESG advocacy, and if you look at all the promises, the one that centers around, you can pick any environment issues, is the issue of galamsey. And in promise number 19, I tried to paste it, but the structure of it is not really helpful. But let's maintain it like that. And then if you look at it, that's a promise that was made. In all the 120 days, the promises that were, if you take one after the other, it constitutes 26. On the one that talks on galamsey or illegal mining, they sort of do two things, which is Tree for Life and then the Blue Water Initiative. Now, some people say we have military people trying to stop galamsey, it didn't work. You are going to bring blue water gas. You see, some like on the face of it, because this it has not lasted. But then we also have from the previous administration that did something similar to the Blue Water Initiative, which is, I think, Yellow Guard or something like that. And so we can use the past to predict the future. And then if certain things are not put in the right perspective, we can be able to assess what happens. But if you look at this policy on the face of it, what is your assessment on that?
Okay, so I think for the galamsey menace, which has to be dealt with, it's not a one-day conversation. It's something which we have to first look at the root cause, starting making a root cause analysis of it. And it's something that we have to bring out a clear plan of it. And in terms of, after bringing out the plan, we also have to put in place a sustainability of same. Because mind you, those who are also in these villages or in the mining communities engaging in the galamsey are also using same as their means of living, but also that cannot be at the disadvantage of others, right?
Yeah.
Hence, we have to draw a plan out. When we take these people out, what's the best alternative, or what's the next way forward with them? I'm sure it's something that can be done, but however, we have to also be strict in terms of implementing the policies, where even those who fall within or who have to be punished by the law will be allowed room to be punished, and people will not end up covering up for others.
Okay, so
maybe.
I don't want you to focus on the galamsey, because the galamsey menace, like you mentioned, we need to really take our time for that. But in response to banning illegal mining in Ghana, the government said it do two things, which is the Tree for Life, growing trees and the blue is it Blue Water Initiative. Both initiatives have been launched. I think if my memory serves me right, both initiatives have been launched. Just focus on the two initiatives for me, because that's what was promised. And then let's see that on the surface of it, is this something that can bring some sort of contribution to the galamsey issue that we have in Ghana? Can it bring some value?
Yeah, so I think can bring some value. Like you said, it has already been launched. I think for the Tree for Life, you realize that most of this illegal mining have already started entering into our forest reserves. So with the launch of this initiative, the first part is we can look at taking out those who have gone into our forest reserve to first reinstate or restore our forest reserves, which is in line with the Tree for Life, and also reinstate our water bodies. Then that's what the first part of the initiative can look at. And I think it's a good initiative because those who are in the forest bodies, I'm sure would not have the licenses to go into those areas to do those mining activities, because any license which is granted has a minimal location where you can go in to mine. So to restore our forest reserves, we cannot just take the people out and leave the forest reserve just like that. When we take them out, we have to restore the forest reserve before we even come out to see where other places where we can plant more trees, probably to help with the climate change action, and not to restore our water bodies, because you could see how the water bodies have been affected. And in the long term, this effect will not just be impacted on those who are in the mining communities, but will even trickle down to those in Accra and in other regions who are not mining regions here.
Great. Isaac, in the social contract, how will you say citizens has been involved in the whole promise? You know, when we have our campaign, it's always the top down, we slap, this is what we will do. But if you look at citizens' involvement, how will you assess that in this whole promises that has been given to us?
Yeah, I believe the citizenry participation engagement it's been good, fairly good, especially for the beginning of this governance. Yeah, so now when you take the economy, like I mentioned earlier on, there's been economic dialogue, and that's to involve almost everybody. Okay, whatever you have, just bring it on board and let's see how we can all drive the country to prosperity. That's been done. Then when you take education too, there's been the National Education Forum too. It took several days. And that one today gave almost everybody participation or the opportunity to bring your inputs. So those of us that even had a research article done in that area presented our input to the government for consideration. Then now, I believe it's smart when you look at the other aspects too. When you take the Mahama case, for instance, it's not solely a government project, but then they've made provision for the citizenry to make contribution towards that Mahama case that can take care of the health needs of the most vulnerable groups in the society. So I believe when it comes to citizen participation, it's been fairly good.
Okay. I want us to look at this question will go for both, but maybe I'll go to Emmanuel first. But I want us to zoom in the business so that we have a proper perspective when it comes to businesses in Ghana. There was a promise on some tax being scrapped, and some we say we need some time. And like you mentioned in your opening statement, that some have not been really implemented, even though some have been announced. So how is that also impacting our business society? And then if all these tax cuts are going to happen, what are some of the innovative initiatives to increase or generate revenue by the government that has also been looked at? If you can put this two for me, I'll be very glad.
Okay, all right. So I think the business community largely we are all enjoying of the abolishment of the e-levy, because we all make some transfers and there were charges in there, and there's not just this, but the entire citizenry. I think, but what we were looking at hugely was the abolishment of the COVID levy, not just impacting the input of businesses, also impacting normal citizens, because everybody makes purchases. And sometimes you go out, maybe you go to the mall or you go to a restaurant and you've made a purchase, thinking that's the end. Probably you made a purchase of 300 cedis, and at the end of the day, you come back and you have extra charges being covered. I think most people ask, COVID has not been with us for a while, but why are we still having it here? I think the conversation has been around that. It was part of the IMF conditions for us to get a loan. Hence, there needs to be some conversation around this before it can be scrapped. We also looking at the review of the Custom Act, which looks at scrapping the importation, scrapping the law banning importation of some salvage vehicles to rescue local automobile industry. I think aside that there are some few other amendments to the tax laws which was being expected to be done, but same were also not being implemented. But like I alluded to, these tax laws, some are attached to some conditions, like the IMF bailout conditions. So it has to take time for it to be abolished. And also, whilst we are looking at abolishing same, we also need to be looking at how we could generate revenue, because this would take down the revenues that were already being probably gotten from it. So we need to find innovative ways of looking at drawing revenue. I think in terms of looking at innovative ways of drawing revenue, we can look at public-private partnerships between the public and the private sector, where the private sector comes together with government to ensure the funding of government-led projects where we all benefit from same. So I think it's something the government can be looking keenly into how we can push for public-private partnerships to help with funding of most of the projects in the coming period. So some conversations are already ongoing in the restoration of the Ghana airline. I'm just being hopeful that probably that would be one public-private partnership in there to help restore the airline, and there should be many in the coming months and years to speeding up growth in the country. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Iman. Isaac, what do you say to this, to that, the business community and how the taxes that are supposed to be scrapped, its impact on them?
Yeah, I believe the main impact is producing a friendly environment for investors. Basically, when I'm coming to do business in, let's say, Ghana, definitely one of the first things I should be looking at is how friendly is what? The ecosystem over there. So I recall last year, the policy scholars team actually, we came up with an article that assessed, what's the word? It assessed how businesses were leaving Ghana. We make mention of big had to leave Ghana because of the unfriendly nature. Because, when you tax people, when you tax companies, or be it, yeah, let's take the companies. When you tax companies, they don't have money to afford it. So what they do is that they push it down to what? The citizenry. So things become so expensive. And if I can't afford that, then it means that you'll be sent out of our business. So now when it comes to these taxes actually and how we're going to replace them, the main concern about Ghanaians that we all knew, and everybody could admit with, was cutting down waste, cutting down expenditure. So, for the past years, almost everybody was making down noise or calling for the cutting down expenditure, cut down the ministers, the number of ministers that we have, cut down this and that and that. And since this government came to power, they've shown those signs that they are ready to do that. You've seen certain ministries that have been scrapped totally, and we've seen the number of appointees being cut down sustainably. So I believe we're on a good course.
Okay, you believe we are on a good course. What is there with government? Let me put it this way. What is it with government that anytime they look at the business community, they look at how they want to tax them first? Why is it so? And not how they want to develop them. Because I believe at least build some structures that will facilitate business, and then come and say, because the structures are in there, we want to take one or two things from you. And I will relate that to the mobile transaction. Mobile money wasn't a thing somebody sat somewhere and created that. Now, when the government came into that market, the only goal that they sought to do was to tax mobile money users and justify that there was almost about trillions of transactions that happens there. And so there's good money there that they can tax from, which we didn't make any innovations whatsoever, but you have that. So what is it with that they always come into the business community to tax? What should be the relationship with government and business in our country? Isaac, will you take it because you just ended? Isaac, you are muted, so maybe after you, Ima, prepare for the same and answer the same time.
Okay, can I be heard?
Yeah, you can be heard now.
Okay. Yeah, I believe it comes down to leadership. That leadership that before being, making noise on. Globally, everybody knows that when it comes to Africa, we are very poor when it comes to leadership because we are not really thinking of innovation. Like you mentioned earlier, we are looking at what? The easy way out. And that has been, for the past year, that's how it has always been. So instead of a government, when you go to other countries, there are even packages that support you when you want to start a business. The government actually comes in to cater for, let's say, if you send a budget of 10,000 Ghana cedis, they can come in and afford 5,800 of that, which is 58% of the amount that you need. And they actually push you and give you tax incentives for a certain period of time before what? When they make sure that your business is what? Built and non-formidable. Then they begin to tax you. But over here, you don't do that. When you see that you establish a business, then we go after you. But other places, what we do is that we rather strengthen the business. And when the business is strengthened and business is going on well, you're able to employ more people. Definitely, those people that you employ are what? They'll be paying taxes. So what we do is that, let's say, you see, we've been talking about expanding the tax bracket, expand the tax net. So what the government have been doing is that, okay, if you 30% of Ghanaians that I'm able to tax, then I make sure that I really tax them so well to cover the other 70% that are not paying. Instead of going after the 70% and creating a system which I believe in tax, or others that are not part of it do believe in it. They will, okay, this is what my tax is doing, or the tax is even affordable. So, when the e-levy conversation even came, so people was adjusting and proposing less than 0.01%. Because obviously, when you give us such amount, if I pay it, I'm not even going to feel it. So it's going to encourage others to use the mobile money system. But what we rather did was, okay, we imposed 1% on just that few that were using it. So obviously, those that had other options were not even going to consider it anymore. So the few that will be using it, we push all the burden on them, which it's not right. And I believe going forward, if you really want to develop, then these are some of the things that we should be looking at. Expand the bracket instead of imposing these Herculean taxes on the few that we can capture.
Okay, let me just give some shout outs out there because Africa, the only poorest part of Africa is just West Africa. We have most of the problem, but some other East Africa, Southern, some are also trying and they are doing best. But the situation is quite very terrible when you come down to West Africa. So let us not make it like all of us, because some people are trying, and let's record, because if we use the European standard for Africa, it makes people feel like the gap is too wide. But we have neighbors that are really doing well, and maybe Emmanuel can give us some tales from Sierra Leone and the rest. Let's hear from you.
Okay, I understand it. So I would just say, regards to dependency on taxes and its relation to the private sector. So most developing countries, just like Ghana, have a narrow tax base. That is, those who fall within the tax, or those who are being impacted or are being chased after, are very small. And we also have limited non-tax revenue, right? So the former private sector, because the former private sector is easy to identify and monitor them compared to the vast informal sector, right? It's difficult to go under the informal sector. And this has been a conversation around taxation in Ghana, how to tax the informal sector, because most part of the informal sector is undocumented. I should put it that way, undocumented. And this makes a larger chunk of what we could have gotten in revenue compared to those who are documented, right? And when we look at other programs which the country has also found itself under, programs with institutions like IMF and World Bank, the governments are often required to increase domestic revenue mobilization, where taxation is a key condition for loans and budget supports. Where we would want to also rely on state-owned enterprises for national revenue, we end up seeing that most state-owned enterprises are also making losses. Where since I think the current government has indicated that they are also going to try to make a shift to ensure that state-owned enterprises come in with some profit. I think that would help to ensure that we do not fully go after or fully depend on the taxes. And also, I think just like we have broadly, that there's lack of innovation in revenue generation in the country, where the political leaders lack the capacity to explore or would not want to venture into exploring or implementing other alternative source of revenue generation. Now, to have what in terms of what can be done differently, right? We need to now find ways of bringing in non-tax revenues and also going after the informal sector and going after the untaxed. So I think just like Isaac mentioned, that where you already find yourself within the tax base, you are the one who the tax authority comes after the more, instead of they ensuring that there's increase in tax compliance, going after those who are not within the tax base. They leave those when once they find, okay, you are visible, you can be monitored, they rather come after you. They rather come after you and let go of those who cannot be monitored. So I think there's much work in terms of the tax compliance, ensuring that those who are not within the base are brought into the base and not putting too much pressure on those who are already in here. And also to link the tax to public value, right? I'm sure if citizens are more willing to pay tax in other countries, I have having conversation with colleagues and friends in other countries, both in Europe and probably in the Western world, they pay taxes. They also pay taxes, and some of their tax rates are even huge than what we see here. However, most of them will say they see results for what they pay, right? They have the social amenities available to them where it is needed. So I'm sure citizens are more willing to pay the tax if they can see results. So we have to kind of ring fence certain tax revenues into particular projects. So if you say we are taking a tax revenue, it's to this particular project, like we have for the GET Fund. We are certain that once it goes into the GET Fund, it should be able to solve a lot of educational problems. So we have some tax revenue, the road toll coming in. We should be able to see our roads being well constructed and not just left aloof or probably left uncatered to. And government also has to see how it can increase innovation, taking into consideration digitization that has come into play in this current global revolution. Government needs to see how it can involve digitization in its business to reduce costs and bring about efficiency. Once we get the cost reduced, there will not be much spending to do. From my end, I feel we are kind of people who we are going in for what we usually want to go in for what we cannot afford. So once we cannot afford, we need to go for external funds, and the external funds comes by means of loan or trying to generate more revenue, where the more revenue we just rely on the current base and not finding other new innovative ways of doing this. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so your submission has introduced something, which is the CSOs, COEs, so state enterprises. I realized that the idea of privatizing state entities is like so much of unheard of. It's something that Ghanaians don't want to hear. However, we also don't want to hear that they are making losses. But the role of the government in our society, government doing business and making losses, is that the role we want the government to adopt? Or we should be able to have good conversation, then welcome privatization. I don't fault the public, because in most of the time, or let me say most of the times, the privatization that people have seen and witnessed is the one that state entities are being sold to cronies, like they are devalued and sold to cronies. And so because of that, they feel like it's like they are selling state assets for themselves, which puts a sort of a mark on the actual privatization, that what it really stands for and what it really is. How do we move forward as a country with this? With this, will go for both of you, but Isaac, you can touch on it first.
Yeah. Okay, so let's start with last year, for instance. I recall TUC, organized labor actually, they almost declared a nationwide strike last year just because there was this political appointee who is actually a minister who wanted to purchase a government asset. That was, I think, Labadi Beach Hotel. And when you go through the books, all the reasons why they are trying to sell it are not legitimate. It was clear that somebody was trying to devalue the company, like you mentioned earlier, and sell it out cheaply to what? An appointee that will just benefit him instead of the nation at large. So you see, when you do this kind of thing, so there is that suspicion over there. But being a part of a free market CSO, I definitely believe in privatization. I actually believe that we should actually go that way, because we've been doing this consecutively for like how many years now? Almost all SOEs they're always running at a loss. So what's the essence of keeping at it? All the time they'll make losses, and now taxpayers will still have to what? Input their revenues in that, just to make sure that it doesn't collapse totally. It doesn't work that way. I believe in privatization, like I said. I think it was weeks ago, when the Minister of Energy and Green Transition, I listened to him extensively, and he was explaining what they are trying to do with the ECG, that's the Electricity Company of Ghana. And, you know, when you listen to me, it's actually a very good thing. So maybe I will need to make time to just expound a little on what he shared on that day. Now,
Okay.
This is what they are trying to do. This is what he, as the minister in charge or leading this, is trying to do. So now they want to bring on board private businesses to come in the aid of ECG. So it's not like they're going to sell it out totally. But now this is how it works. So he explained that when you take, let's say, Ashanti region, for instance, Ashanti region has a certain capacity that, let's say, that's given to them every month. So let's say if Ashanti region is taking 100 kilowatts, let's say monthly, what they are going to do is that they are going to outsource that 100 kilowatts. They are going to give it to a company. So immediately they give that 100 kilowatt to the company, they are going to take the money. ECG will take the money. So even before you start selling out, you've already paid for it. So now it's up to you to make sure that that 100 kilowatt that's given to you, the people use it and you make your profit. And now when it is given to you too, it's not like you're going to sell it at a price that you want, because already there's PURC who make these allocations and determines how much each kilowatt should cost the Ghanaian. So you see, he was explaining that when we do this, there will never be a case that, okay, light has gone out for, let's say, 30 minutes or 1 hour or even a whole day, like has been happening. Because if light goes out for 30 minutes, the company is going to lose money, because already the government has taken its money already. So it's now come down to you that make sure that there's efficiency. And also you chase people every month to pay their bills. I remember last year I had to go to ECG office like 3 times. I had to journey, because it's quite far from where I live. 3 times just to pay a light bill. So it was like I was chasing them to pay my bill. And even despite that one, I couldn't get a chance to pay until when they brought that app up. So privatization is the way to go. I believe we should actually consider it and make sure we are doing it genuinely and right.
Great. So I'll admonish that we stay within maybe 2 minutes when it comes to our submissions. And let me also add that we have added a panelist. He's in a person of Charles Fifi Hagan. I'll move to Emmanuel so that you add up, and then I'll come and give you his profile very well. He's into tax advocacy. That's why you see him. He likes to advocate that tax will come down. So he's here with us, but I'll let him speak maybe after Emmanuel. Thank you very much. So Ima, you can pick it up.
Yeah, hello. Okay, so the issue of privatization of the state-owned enterprise has been one which has hugely been debated, because this could either be a catalyst for economic efficiency, or it could be what I'll say a vehicle for elite capture, depending on how it's been executed, right? Because where there are issues of privatization, there could be an increase in efficiency and also improvement in innovation, and also brings about reduction in some losses and also indebtedness. However, learning best from history, most often, most of this privatization end up to elite capture, job losses, labor resistance, public service risks, among others, right? To my end, I think the best approach for Ghana, or what Ghana can consider to do, is more of a mixed track approach, where we put into place a performance-based management contract with all the state-owned enterprises, putting in place KPIs which would monitor their performance. We have in place in private organizations where KPIs are implemented, and if you do not meet those KPIs within a fiscal year, some top management are not given promotion, or where salaries are not increasing, among others. But we cannot be in an instance where performance is not at its best, but state-owned enterprises, we have salaries going up. So when we have a performance-based contract with these organizations, it will ensure that once you are not performing well, the next discourse will be whether you should still be enjoying these perks, because you should still be enjoying these perks, because these perks are not paid by the monies you are generating. Probably we will have to go out for external fund to ensure that those salaries are paid, among others. Aside that, we could look at public listing of some of the state-owned enterprises, where we have external investments coming, or share ownerships, that is citizens' ownership coming in, right? When you look at Burkina Faso, I think I was following a conversation yesterday on Burkina Faso on one of the social influencers, where there was a tomatoes factory of sort, where the indication is that this tomatoes factory is owned by the citizens, in the sense that the citizens put in their money or make a contribution to ensure that the factory is good. So each citizens, or as much as possible, those who contributed, have a share ownership into this, which says that, okay, we are all investing into this, and there's not an external fund, and we could call to account those who are in there, right? We could also look at instances where we have community ownership. So where we have most of this small manufacturing. Hello?
We can hear you. We can hear you.
Okay, all right. So like where we have most of the small manufacturing companies being built, like the sugar factory, among others, we have the community members coming in as part of ownership to say, okay, if you put in performance and you get to this target, probably 20% or 10% come back to the community to develop the community. Hence, it's not just for the larger people or for the larger state, but you all get to benefit. So those, because we'll be employing those in the community, hence everybody puts in as much work as possible. But to go strictly 100% privatization, I think it's a risk. Looking at history, it's a risk. I'm not sure the country is ready to be there, but we could look at a mixed approach and also bring in a public-private partnership where private owns some percentage, public owns some percentage, and also put private in charge of management being guided by some KPIs, ensure that they meet certain KPIs, and if you don't meet certain KPIs, the punitive measures are also put in place here. Thank you.
Great, great. So like I promised, we'll have one panelist who has joined us. He's Charles Fifi Hagan. He's a governance and compliance strategist with background in business administration and law. He's also the president of Kahil Dari Institute, a think tank in Ghana that drives innovations in tax justice, enterprise development, and poverty reduction, with focus on empowering SMEs and women-led businesses through policy advocacy and grassroots engagement. Mr. Charles, you are welcome to join us. We can't hear you. We can't hear you that much. If you are saying thank you, you are not hearing.
Is it better now?
Yeah, it's better.
Okay. Thank you very much for having me.
Okay, you're welcome. But it's better, but it's very, very faint. It's very small. So if you can maybe increase the volume of your voice a bit, I think we'll be hearing you loud and clear. I think that's better. We also want to admonish our participants that we as part of our policy town hall, we admonish you to ask questions. You can drop them in the chat box, or you raise your hand and then I'll call you to have the mic. So if you're a participant, you just raise your hand. Once I see that, I'll call on you and then you ask your question. However, you can also drop your questions in the chat box directly and I will read it as well. I'll read it as well. Just drop it in the chat box directly and then I'll read it. Okay. So let me come back to our panelists. After the 120 days, people are looking out to measure the government. People are saying, we score you this, we score you that, and I hope we talk about that. Now, what do you think will be great in terms of measurable outcomes or indicators that should be used in evaluating the successes or the shortcoming for this 120 promise that has ended? What do you think will be a fair metric as well? Let me add that. Let me continue with Emmanuel, and then I'll come to Charles.
Okay, so I think it has more to do with ensuring sustainability of the reforms or whatever has been initiated, right? So we have to look at the long-term sustainability of these reforms and require, I would say we require to have a multi-dimensional approach where we will incorporate in a legal safeguard, institutional mechanisms, and civil engagements, right? For institutional reforms, we can look where policies are introduced via executive orders or party manifesto. What has been the achievement rate so far? So we can look at how this initiative have actually transformed the citizenry or the lives of the people, right? And this cannot be done just at the point of initiation, but we can also look at putting into place a performance-based governance where we put or we create a dashboard, right? We create a digital platform tracking quarterly or half year, either quarterly or half year, the progress that has been made. And this should be able to be visible to be assessed by both the public and parliaments, right? Where we can say, okay, these are the things that you indicated that you are going to do. And we're able to track clearly that this is what has been done so far. And not just by way of saying we've done this by word of mouth, but we could actually see tangible things because we've had experiences in the past where people say they've done things, but when you go onto the grounds, you realize most of them are just
paper projects.
Nothing has actually been, actually been instituted or nothing is really on the ground. So we have to ensure that we are having track of what has been said and what is actually being done. And that will help in terms of accountability and also look at in terms of long-term financing, that's referencing our funds to particular programs and projects. Yeah, thank you.
Fantastic. So let me move to to Charles. Charles, do you want to share something on that? Quick one.
Well, thank you very much. My sound okay now.
Yeah, your sound is okay.
So I think I'll pick it up from where Emmanuel ended. With sustainability. In 2017, all right, we had good fiscal consolidation by the former government. I remember I was on a morning show on a certain TV station, and then the host asked me, "The government is doing well. What's up?" We clap. I said, "Just hold on. Let's wait till 2020. Then we can begin to applaud the government. We are able to sustain fiscal consolidation up until the 4-year cycle. And lo and behold, we all have seen the result of that. And so, what I think is good, very good. CD is performing outrageously well against the dollar beyond expectation. Taxes are coming down. You know, you know that once the taxes are coming down, I'm very happy for my people. That's good. But then the question is about sustainability. How are we putting in place to show that number? Okay, in the next 2 years, we can say that government revenue there's a short in government revenue, and so the taxes that we will come back.
Okay.
I think we need to be looking at. And so our sustainability process, there should be a clear path to sustainability.
Great. So, Isaac, you won't touch on the same question. I'm coming to share the screen. Okay. So, can you all see my screen? So, with promise number 13, this is where most of the, let me say, promise to do some of these anti-corruption issues. They said they want to institute. Let me read this so that we refresh all of us our memory. Say, institute inquiry and of forensic audit into the following matters of public interest: collapse of indigenous Ghanaian banks and financial institutions at a supposed cost of 225 billion Ghana cedis, illegal printing of money, the 58 million National Cathedral scandal, illegal and inflated single source contract, COVID-19 expenditure scandal, PDS, EJAPA, SML, ambulance spare parts deal, 13 African Games, SkyTrain, Palugu Dam, Marset, galamsey fraud, missing excavators and tricycles. Then the Sputnik V scandal. Then we have the bus scandal, among others. Even with this promise, there's still some sort of among others there, meaning there are lots, kind of. But with everything, with all these scandals, how has the government fared on these ones? Because what even busted my mind, like the 13th African game, for instance, if you look at the money that went into the game, and after the game, we don't even have any infrastructure to say that, oh, we have this infrastructure. After the games, we can even point out and say, this stadium, because of this game, when it came to Ghana, and then we build it. Like, you can say that we built some stadium for Can 2008 and whatnot. But Charlie, okay, so please, this one, let's take like 1 minute, and let's do that, because corruption, people, if I leave you speak a lot. Okay, so Isaac, let me hear you.
It's good if you limited us to just a minute. I believe that
you pick your favorite scandal and then make your assessment on it and its impact, kind of, because if you don't want to touch on all, it may not help to do justice.
Okay. Yeah, so with the 13th one, I believe it shouldn't have been taken by the government as implemented. But then the president mentioned that they've instituted a committee that has started probing the issue of the 13th African Games. So I believe that's the only one that they touch when it comes to that place. So that's why they indicate that it's implemented. Now, like I thought I was the only one who was very passionate about the 13th African Games. You know, we all used to love sports a lot. We love our blasters and all. But it was obvious that the place has been corrupted and it wasn't attractive anymore. So now when you look at this, the stadium that you are mentioning, for instance, I tried reading the details and, you know, Ghana was expected to actually construct a new stadium. And that new stadium should have cost Ghana 90 million Ghana cedis. And we said, oh, we couldn't afford that amount of money within that shortest period. So instead, they chose to rather renovate the Legon Stadium. And that's renovation. If we're to construct a new one, that should cost Ghana 90 million. But then we ended up using 85 million Ghana cedis to renovate the stadium. And I have not been there, but you have been there. You have seen that there's not even anything that indicates that there was actually that amount of money spent on it. So, well, we all look forward to the future and see how, they will deal with that.
Emmanuel, let me hear from you on that.
Okay, so I think on the case of forensic audits on these scandals, from what I said, forensic audit is not something that can be done in just 1 month or two, looking at the amount of scandals in place. Hence, I do not know what, I'm sure maybe what they had in the 120 days is to launch, like I said, a team has been put together to start looking into this. But we need to make in some room, but closely monitor the progress of this to ensure that every issue, every scandal that has been stated in there, we have a resource or report on same. And those who have to face the law duly do that, and they pay their quota of putting us in a position where we probably will be deprived of development. Yeah.
Okay, that's great. Charles, let's do a quick one on that. I have some 3 promises that I'll also share screen and that you follow. So be snappy for me for that one.
Okay, so coming from the background of the master, I would have loved some things to have done into the national cathedral stuff. I've used that stretch a whole lot of time. Buildings that came down, but the dark and all of that. Was it the best use of Ghana's money and resources? And so that is an area I'm expecting a lot of attention to be owning. I'll leave it at that so that we can.
Think is your question, is it a best use of our resources? And Iman mentioned something earlier that if people see that their monies are put into good use, maybe they will have like love to pay taxes. And Iman, is that not?
Oh yes, yes.
Okay, let me share this one too. This one talks about the government institute a government policy banning political appointees from purchasing state assets. So that one goes into the first one that we talked about. Then allocating money for the establishment of the Women's Bank. Then launching of these youth programs. So we have the Jumera, the National Entrepreneurship Program, and 1 million Codex program. With this promises, well, I want us to focus on the youth. The political appointment bits, if you want to touch on, because there has been a code of conduct where they want to ban themselves from purchasing state assets, and you mentioned something about streamlining the scholarship. They used to put their children, everybody on their scholarship, whilst we are still paying school. So that I never knew they don't understand school fees issues until I came to realize that their children really be on scholarship, so no need. So let us focus on the youth aspect, the promises for the youth, and how it can impact them as well. So Charles, I want you to begin with this so that I'll go to Iman and I come to Ellie. But you feel free to pick on anything that we've talked on earlier. But it's going to be 2 minutes.
Okay, that's fine. The youth appointment for me, it's a good thing. That's the first thing I'll say. It's a good thing. It will make a statement either for the positive or for the negative for youth opportunities in the future. And so if the youth that are given the opportunity now to be in ministerial positions, CEO positions, and all of that, distinguish themselves so well that it makes a case for us waiting for the youth given space, and then the 70-old men and women should go and relax. If the youth fail us now, then the oldies now have a case that when we give you the opportunity, you messed it up. And so we are just hoping and praying that these people that are getting these jobs will distinguish themselves excellent. And then in 30 seconds on the 1 million coders program. If implemented well, it should serve us quite good because let's take for instance the issue that happened with MTN and all of it. Wahaha. I've seen recently that they've shared they're looking for cybersecurity professionals to come handle a lot of things for them. And so these are areas in Ghana that are lacking. If we keep focusing on this enough, we'll have a future. Hold on. Thank you.
Great. Please, Ima, take it from here.
So looking at the youth-related programs, we have from the National Apprenticeship, from the Jumara, 1 million coders, the no academic fee policy to the free tertiary persons with disability, free sanitary pad, reforms of the scholarship program. I think these programs are diverse and interconnected, right? They are targeting skills, education, gender equality, and disability inclusion. But I think the policy makes both short-term enablers, for instance, the fee waivers, and also long-term investment, that's the digital skills and apprenticeship. However, the question is, one, do we have room for all this as a country? And two, how are we going to sustain this in the long term? Is it that one government is coming in and start this and another government comes and stop it? Or probably does not continue same, right? I'm looking at how sustainability also, where if we are looking at fee waiver, as Ghana at the position where it can waive off fee, because when you look even at the student loan scheme, sometimes back when I was in school, students can sometimes do not get a loan even until it's almost time to write exams before they end up receiving their loans. And some schools end up putting punitive measures or maybe interest on some of this school fees. So as a country, are we there yet to say we are waiving off fees? There are other alternatives that can be considered. And if we still want to go on with this, most of this, what's the long-term sustainability of same? I think that currently there's no publicly available, maybe I'm not aware, but there's no publicly available dashboard tracking this in terms of monitoring and evaluation to see if you are talking of youth being trained, how many people have been trained? Just training someone is not the end of it. I think today we are still on the conversation of unemployment where people are complaining about going to school, ending up with a degree and still not getting work to do. Are we also coming to train as much people as possible and leave them? What's the next step after training them? What's the end goal? Are there spaces there available where we are going to use them? Is there a factory? Is the government looking at building a factory where it's saying, okay, we're going to do our own chairs in-house, maybe staff state-owned enterprises where their uniforms supposed to be wear. We are going to create a factory where we sew our own uniforms so that when these people are from the apprenticeship programs, from carpentry, from electrician, sewing and the rest, they go end up in these factories, helping the state to grow or work for the state. And if someone decide not to go for that, they go for their own alternative means. Are there those stuff there? In terms of the 1 million coders, the 1 million coders, I think the same issue when they are done, where are they going into? But I think my concern also is the risks of leaving out the youth in the rural areas, right? Do they have the infrastructure in place to be involved in this? Or is it more of just those in the urban areas? Is it the urban areas, just the only people who are going to benefit from this? And if you go to the rural area to go and teach someone coding, what's the end game goal for him or her? What is it going to use with this coding ability if the infrastructure in place to have internet connection and the rest is not well being catered for? So then once we have these promises looking beautiful, funds going into it, the government still has more questions to answer in terms of sustainability, in terms of monitoring and evaluation, and whether there has actually been a need analysis for this. right? Do we need this as a country at this point? Yeah, thank you.
Awesome. You've really raised very important question that I want to put this one in addition. That we shouldn't end at just the education. We should just add know where they are going to go. Now, I don't know if you've noticed this. I'm coming to Ellie. Ellie, you are with some of these district assemblies. We are going to train coders. District assemblies, most of you, they don't even have website. Some don't have responsive. You don't have responsive emails. You send them email, nobody reply. In fact, it's not just the district assembly. All government agencies, most of them cannot even reply that, oh, yeah, hello, we received your email. We acknowledge that we have received it. But you see, I don't know who has built one of those old websites for them, very unresponsive, very unrelated. And you have them publicizing their website address on their email address on their socials and whatnot. But you write to them, nobody replies and whatnot. So maybe 1 million coders. Can we find a place in the assembly so that at least somebody to respond to emails when you send them that, oh, we are doing so and so, you get people to somebody is putting in the chat that most of their numbers don't even work. So even telephones. So if you train somebody for an assistant, virtual assistant, where is the person coming to fit in the economy? So we don't just want to end by just training them. So Ellie, let me hear from you on this, and then talk on education as well, because we talk about how the scholarship and those things also fit in the educational structure that we have. So please do the two in 2 minutes for me.
Okay. So shoot a disclaimer earlier when I spoke about leadership in Africa in general. So I also want to start with a disclaimer. I think I tried something, and thankfully my expectation has been disappointed. I'm actually glad my expectation was disappointed. You know, last Tuesday, I sent an email to University of Ghana, to one of their departments. I'm making some inquiry. I sent them an email. You know, the complaints are saying that, oh, you send this email and it takes them forever to reply. Yeah, so it took them like 3 days to respond to me. So this, I think this...
but University of Ghana is not an assembly. They even want students.
It's a government institution. You mentioned it's a government institution.
So I was talking about most government institutions, but the worst ones, they are selling education. So for them, once you write to them, they'll reply you. But I'm talking about those who are responsible for our development, government institutions that are responsible for our development, in fact, whatever, they are assemblies. So don't go and hide behind University of Ghana and say because University of Ghana have done a response to your email. All government agencies do respond to your email. Even the police, when you report somebody to the police, they have to tell you that they don't even have lorry fare to come for that person. You have to pay, let alone going to send them email that they should come and arrest somebody. So yeah, please, I don't want you to come here and defend the assembly.
I'm not defending them.
I want you to engage the link between the question Emmanuel asks, that if the government is training 1 million coders, the focus shouldn't be just about the training, but we should have a plan to find out where they are going to fit. And so he mentioned that if you are training them in carpentry, are they going to do government, what do you call it? Is there going to be a factory to where they are going to produce furnitures, or they are going to be responsible for creating furniture for government institutions? But if we train them on carpentry, and at the end of the day, we have to import furniture from China for them to use in parliament, then the training alone may be a disservice if you look at it on that tangent. So it's just a contribution that he made. I felt like it was very significant, but I didn't want to go to the bulk of it that I'm going to establish factories and whatnot. So I just make a small aspect that if it comes to creating website, once you train the person on coding, creating a website, once you fail, you can create a website, simple, respond to email. It's something small. You don't need to build a factory before you get these things done, for the assemblies especially, so that they can be responsive to their email, the Ministry of Education and whatnot. But it's okay. You just touch on the education bit for me, and then let's make progress.
I don't know how you've caged me, but it's fine. But I think we're all making the same point actually, and I believe, yeah, it keeps getting better. I wouldn't want to say that, but then, like I said earlier on, Legon has not always been, as I said earlier, with my experience, that hasn't been the story all the time. I know a good friend who sent mail after mail after mail, and it was almost a year after that it was responded to. And I believe last year, the district assemblies in Ghana started an initiative actually, and it is getting better. So probably let's hope that we get there. Yeah, so it's very important that, yeah, like Mr. Emmanuel mentioned earlier, it's very important that with all these trainings and education, they are well targeted. So when it comes to the 1 million code days program, for instance, I want to believe that is the present remote job opportunity that the world of IT offers that the government is trying to capitalize on. That's my belief. Although they've not come up with a very clear, comprehensive explanation to what their target is. That's very important. So, and when it comes to the other apprentice and Ejumara program too, let's go on the apprenticeship. So I learned a trade, then when afterwards I'm employed to start my own. So you see, it all comes down to the kind of business environment that we are building for ourselves per year. Last year, I was very shocked when a farmer friend revealed to me that he is into vegetables. He revealed to me that when you check those vegetables that are imported from Burkina Faso, and when you compare their prices to the prices of Ghanaian ones, theirs is cheaper than ours. And some of these things, you tend to disbelieve or rebuke it, but then that's the reality on ground. So we can look at all these things comprehensively, like I said earlier on, then probably touch it one after the other and come up with something that's working. Because most of these things have been tried in the past governments. You make mention of NAPCO, people were trained, people had experience at work, but eventually what happened? They had to go back home and find something else. Okay, so you asked me to touch on education lastly. Yeah, with education, I take a lot of interest in education, and I'm very pleased about the uncapping of the GET Fund. Because already when we look at the educational sector, like our problems it's like there's no end to our problems. So this one, to how to make reference to our works that we do at Yafo Institute. Last year, we published an article that tried evaluating the gains made by Ghana when it comes to attain the SDG goal 4 target 3. In that article, we reviewed how that the Financial Times, the Business and Financial Times, they came up with a research publication in 2021. And when you look at that, they tried evaluating the problems of Ghanaian education. So in that article, they identified that or reviewed that a total of 5,403 schools were in very critical conditions, which means that the government should be extending its hand there, whether it's renovation or actually coming up new structures. That's for it. Then also, we had a total of 2,417 schools, which were schools under 3. Personally, I believe that even in the next 50 years, some of these problems will still persist, especially when it comes to schools under 3. Because of my work as a rural development planner, I've become very exposed to the problems of rural communities, and I know there's no turning back. Because the government, let's say, the government or those that are in charge of making these decisions, they don't really relate with the problems of the most, like the furthest communities in Ghana. Because as I'm speaking to you right now, and it's very shocking, as I'm speaking to you right now, there's somebody who is starting a community somewhere in the name of agriculture or farming. And in the next 10 years or 20 years, by the time you realize he has a community, and now that community needs a school, they need what? They need water and what have you. So I believe like that's what makes it drive that these things will be there all the time. Yeah, then so with the uncapping of dates, it has also made provision for what? A reliable funding source for the free FSHS. All these years that free FSHS has been in existence, there's not been any clear budget allocation for it. But with uncapping, we know that we have access to take care of it. And also, a lot can also be channeled into primary education, which has been left unattended to because of what? The free FSHS. I believe there's a lot more when it comes to education. But
yeah, I think we will have to hold a section on that, with particular focus on education, that we can put all the dimension in perspective. Now we have a lot of CSOs on this town hall. I want us to look at our final question because we have done almost 1.5 hours, and then we'll leave the last 15 minutes to maybe participants to ask questions. I wanted to start on this one. I'll start with Emmanuel. How should civil society, what should be their role in monitoring the gains within these social contracts? What should be their roles? And then how can the government also leverage on civil societies in terms of monitoring and ensuring that in the long term, these things have been achieved? Because I always believe that policies are not supposed to be judged by the intentions or the objectives that they put out, but rather the results that they bring to the society. And before you come in on it, let me add that Ellie will leave the panel because he has something to also attend to, which is equally important. So we are going to continue this section without him. Thank you very much, Emmanuel.
So I would say in terms of CSOs should continue to be keenly involved in the discourse in terms of government issues and development matters, and also to be very critical of the government and also of state-owned enterprises, where we keenly monitor whatever is going on. I think the past government made a statement that we must be citizens and not just spectators. So I think that's the main duty of the CSOs, because most of our, fortunately, I'm also on a team of, I work with some CSOs also, and most of what we do is not even funded by governments. There's no government funding being channeled to CSOs. So the expectation is mainly that we are seen as independent bodies who can give a critical evaluation of whatever is going on. Hence, we do not allow ourselves to be influenced, but to ensure that we lead the government on into the right direction to promote growth of the nation. Yeah, thank you.
Great. Charles, you can also add up.
Okay, so I'm of the view that CSOs, like Emmanuel was saying, should look at our engagements with government. Okay, previously government has not been so friendly with CSOs, and so the relationship has not been that way they ought to be. However, still need to pushing, especially for advocacy and engagement, policy advocacy. We need to set monitoring controls, especially for metrics that we're going to measure the government by. And so just like these engagements we're having, government has said 20 days, I want to do A, B, C, D. Civil society, government has made this promise. We are government on their toes to ensure that we are asking the right question. That, okay, said we'll do A, B, C, D. Will they be able to do it? No, they did A, B, they didn't do C and D. Why didn't they do C and D? What is the way out? Take this then some our position. I remember when the taxes were being scrapped off, myself and Yafu, Ayel and Yafu had done some advocacy on some of the taxes, especially I think it was with the e-levy and then person tax as well. And once these began to go off, and then COVID-19 didn't go off, we can't ask questions. When is the COVID-19 tax going to go off? And so then we give that response that, okay, we are engaging IMF, we are done. All these things were not in place until civil society began to ask questions. And so I think these things are responsibility for us.
That's fantastic. Great. So you said that in the past, yeah, government are always critical on CSO because we are also critical on them, and the fact that we have some sort of independency, so it's like your voice cannot be controlled. It's sometimes become a pain in their neck, but ultimately, it's supposed to help the society. What I found quite worrying is when the very citizens that CSOs are fighting for turn around to supporting the government, and sometimes they throw some shades against CSO reports. I'm like, somebody is saving you, and that's what you have to say. Okay, no problem. So we want to call on our audience. If you have any questions, please unmute yourself and ask, because we are getting to the latter part of our discussion. I see a lot of people on the call. We want to welcome one or two questions from you. If not, we will take the last words from our panelists, and then we'll draw the curtains. Anybody to go? Okay. Anybody to go? There are lots. If you take the document, it says, okay. Academic fee. Yes. Okay. So our audience, you can also put your questions in the chat box. I'll read them. Let me see. We have a lot of eyeballs also watching us online. Let me check if there are any questions over there. Okay. Okay, so we have some question. I think this one is talking about GMPC must be privatized. Okay, so somebody is bringing about this is a Prince Henry. He says we should privatize GMPC. I didn't. We mentioned privatization earlier on our discussion, and he said with all force. Yes, I agree with Prince. I agree with Prince. Yes, Prince is also another fantastic individual in the CSO space. Okay, let me check our socials, and then let me come in the chat. If anybody having a question. Okay, those who are sending me something personal, let me look at that one too. So what is let's do this one. So what institutional reform or policy shifts are necessary to ensure that future social contracts are more inclusive, transparent, and impactful? We mentioned this earlier. Emmanuel, can you do justice to this one? Institutional reform. This one. We said what institutional reforms or policy shifts are necessary to ensure that future social contracts are more inclusive, transparent, and impactful. The social contract, we don't necessarily need to get them from the, what do you call it, political manifesto. So if that is why we got this current one that we are analyzing. So what can be done to make it more inclusive in the future?
So think from my end, Ghana has experienced frequent policy discontinuation, which stem from partisan division. Right? So I believe there should be an initiation of or establishment of a non-partisan national development framework, which should be long-term, co-signed by all major political, if not the major, all political parties, which will be adhered to. The development of this political framework should mainly be targeted, including its council should look at including academia, business, the CSOs, the traditional leaders, and even those in politics. But it should be an independent, we should look at an independent council forming this national development framework. So probably we could have a 10 years development framework. After the 10 years, we reinstitute another. That we do not have one political party coming into power and say, okay, I am bringing this social contract. So before you even come to power, we would have already have some social contract that is expected that after first 4 years, when the government leave power and another government comes into power, for its first 3 months or 120 days, we expect this of the government, that there'll be continuity in our policies and our projects, that we do not end up taking one step forward, and in the next 4 years, we have those steps coming back again and coming to start all over again.
Great. I think Charles has dropped off the line, maybe internet issue or something. But since it's not in, let me take your final words and then draw the curtains to a close.
So to secure gains from the government's resetting Ghana agenda, I would say Ghana, we have to look at shifting from a short-term policy to long-term institutional engineering. There should be legislative enchantments, accountability. We also have a look at strategic financing and also bipartisan cooperation from the foundation of, from the formation of resilient reforms and infrastructure, where one party would not say, when they come into power, they can no longer work with, and also make initiatives to be state-owned and not party-owned, where we'd not say, okay, this person names an initiative after him, and when the next party comes to power, says, I can no longer work under that name, but the initiative should be state-owned. And if these pillars are upheld, I'm sure the agenda can become a historic turning point in Ghana's democratic and development journey. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your time. Thanks to all our panelists that were able to make time to join us. Also, our audience that have stayed on the call to this far, those online, and those on our YouTube and Facebook channel that are monitoring as well. We thank you for how far we have come. This is Liberty Lens Production, and thank you all for making the Policy Dialogue, Policy Town Hall, a very successful one. Have a good evening, good morning, or good afternoon, wherever you find yourself in the world. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.